there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today I was wondering about things around the house that I can take prints off. And I'm going to show you a few things today that I had heaps of fun making some prints with, and then I'm going to turn them into some cards. So the first one here is this kitchen towel or handy towel or whatever you call it where in your space in the world. And I'm just going to cut this down so I can use this a few different pieces. I'm starting off with a piece kind of a bit bigger than my A2 sized card, and I'm going to take prints straight off of the paper towel. So I have some pigment inks here. These are the VersaFine Clair pigment inks. And I'm just starting off with a straight blue color, plain blue color. And I am totally experimenting. I have never done this before, I have never seen this before, although I am more than positive that I'm not the first one to make it up. Often I see people kind of use these with gel plates and things, but I'm skipping that step, and these are things that I am able to have at home, and I don't have to have too many tools and things to create them. So I'm simply putting pigment ink down on my paper towel. I am using a little roll of washi tape here just to kind of press it down smoothly, but honestly your fingers are going to work just fine. And I am going to make sure it is well covered on the back. I've put lots of pressure, and then look at this fun print. That was so easy, and I'm sure that, again, wherever you are from in your space in the world, there will be lots of different patterns on your paper towel. So I'm going to start off again here. I have Summertime and I have Cheerful, an orange and a yellow pigment ink, and I'm going to kind of go a little bit more in a pattern. The first one was pretty plain. It was just one color and I was just trying it out, and it worked. I got a pretty good strong print there, kind of surprisingly. The reason I'm using pigment ink is because it stays wet for a little bit longer. Dye ink I think would be a little bit tricky unless you wanted to add water, a little light spritz of water, and that would kind of bring it back to life and then maybe give you a print. I mean, I don't know, I haven't tried it. I'm just thinking here as I'm doing the voiceover, so that could be fun. This one here with the orange and the yellow worked really well. These prints were so much fun to make, and I can tell you already that I made a lot of these. This time I'm going to come in with 3 colors. As I said, I was just having fun experimenting. I have a really small craft space, so it's important to me that I can use all of my tools in the most amount of ways possible. I want to experiment without having to kind of buy in new bits and pieces. Don't get me wrong, I love buying something new. I love kind of investing in something, but I want to make sure I can use it so many ways. And I did invest in the re-inkers for the VersaFine Clair inks. So I know that even though this may take ink from my ink pads, I am having a whole lot of fun. They are there and they are meant to be used, and I have the re-inkers available to re-ink them if they get dry as well. So this one was on the diagonal there from red, orange and yellow. And I kind of did one color at a time for that one. So I did like red, and then I took a print from it, and then I added the orange and then took a print, and then the yellow. And then this one I decided to just go over and refresh the colors and see how many prints I can kind of get off one piece of the paper towel. And so I am going to just refresh all 3 of the colors. But then when I start looking at this, I must admit, how pretty does the actual paper towel look? So I'm going to show you something in a minute as well, because this is kind of where my head goes. You start on one thing and then you come up with the next idea and you're like, no, I have to finish the video that I'm on my one track to start with. Otherwise the videos would end up being hours long, but I try and kind of keep it on one track. But honestly, you could veer off on so many different tangents with this and create with so many of them. So I do struggle with that a little bit. I could show you lots and lots and lots of cards, but the videos end up being so long, and I prefer to do shorter videos. But who knows, maybe I'll just do a part 2 to this one because it was so much fun. Right, something else that we can do printing with. Again, this is not brand new, but this is the first time that I am trying it, and it is really fun. So I have some twine here, some string. This one is just kitchen twine. It's sort of not crafting twine. I have a little piece of double-sided tape. This one happens to be the scrapbook.com double-sided tape. It is nice and thick, and I will show you why I like this one in just a minute. I'm putting a couple of little pieces on each end of one of my acrylic blocks. This happens to be a long, kind of skinny acrylic block, but of course this is going to work for squares, and circles might be a little bit hard to wrap around, but I don't know, give it a go. and especially if you have a little bit of tape to hold things in place. And I am just wrapping this around, and I am crisscrossing over top of each other. I did find that if you made sure that the string didn't cross over each other, then of course you get kind of a nice flat even pattern. It's kind of hard to explain, but if you did crisscross over, then I will show you exactly what that's going to look like in just a second. So once I thought I had enough string wrapped around, I'm going to add a little bit of the pigment ink. This happens to be the Paradise color. I ink it up pretty well because it's the first time it's been inked, and even though you can see ink on my acrylic block, there is none going to get there because there is enough height from the string. I ended up re-inking this every time because I wasn't sure how well a second generation stamp would be, but in a minute I'm going to do the second generation stamping, and actually it's just as bright, so you don't need to ink it up every time. The string holds lots of ink, and you can see up there it's really nice and bright too. And there's a fun pattern that could kind of start off a background for you as well. Now, sticking with the string kind of theme, I had another idea while I was here, and again I'm going to take a little bit of the scrapbook.com double-sided adhesive. If you don't have double-sided adhesive sheets, then I'm sure you could just use some roller adhesive or some double-sided tape and pop that down too. Just whatever you have in your stash and whatever is easiest for you. Then I'm going to create a kind of swirly whirly pattern on here. You could do any pattern at all. You could do tiny little dots of it. There are so many different options. I'm really just showing you a couple that I had to play with, and I just had a thoroughly good time kind of playing with this technique. Here's what it looks like kind of up close. That's what I'm going to start with, and then I'm going to take the blue ink and dab it over top. Then you can kind of go for gold and start printing with it. Now this one, I must admit, this was really just me playing and kind of having a bit of a play. I did want to see if I were able to change the color of ink that I use. So here I've gone to a darker blue, which is pretty obvious and pretty easy. You're not going to contaminate your ink pads too bad. But what I did end up doing is kind of blotting off all of the ink that I had left on here. And then I am going to give it a wipe with a dry cloth to kind of take off some of the excess ink. I kind of do a little bit of dabbing, and then I just press it down to make sure most of the ink is gone, and then I'm going to use a grey ink here, and this works really well. I know it's hard to tell on camera, but there was no blue to it at all. I probably wouldn't suggest, working from a blue and then going to a yellow or anything like that. I would probably make up a new acrylic block to do that, just because I would hate to damage your ink pads or get too much contamination. But I was able to get most of the ink off really easily, as you saw when I kind of stamped it down, on that scrap paper. Then I decided to make up a second smaller one and do a really kind of basic background, but this is the beginning of a really fun card. So many different options you can do here. I would love to see how you will get creative with this kind of option. There are so many different things. It kind of was a little bit mind-boggling where I could go with all of this. I did just want to quickly show you how I take these off the block. I did one and forgot to film it and thought you might like to see. So this is why I use the whole sheets here, because they kind of peel off as a whole sheet. And I guess that's why I use that as opposed to anything else. So I find that the easiest using the whole sheets. Then this piece here was like calling out to me. Look how gorgeous this is. This is the one that I did on the diagonal that I did earlier on. And I must admit, if I were you, I would wait till this is dry, because we are using some pigment ink and this is going to stay wet for a little while. And we did really saturate this one. So I did get a little bit of ink in places. However, if you dried this with a heat tool, or if you let this dry properly, then that wouldn't happen. And this was all able to be wiped off, no problem at all. But I'm trimming this down, and the paper towel trims perfectly with the Tim Holtz little trimmer. So that could pretty much be on a card front within itself. As I said, a whole nother tangent. Now here are a couple of card fronts I created, and I thought I would go with this one on the left because this one seemed a little bit trickier than the other one. The other one on the right seems super easy. The pattern was all nice and even. This one has the yellow, the orange, and then the red in the top right hand corner. I am popping this down into my stamping platform, and I'm going to use the Altenew leaf clusters. This is one of my favorites. You can tell because it seems to appear in every single card I make at the minute, and I am just picking off a couple of the stamps. Now this stamping platform is the Couture Creation stamping platform. This is my favorite. I have a review of why this is my favorite over all the other brands, and I have tried most of them or a lot of them. I think this is sold out at the moment, mainly sold out in most places, so I will leave links to this, but I've talked to a couple of the companies and they say that they will be getting it back in stock as soon as possible. And also I use the sticky grid mats on the back here. That is what is taped down to the inside of my stamping platform, and that way I don't have to use magnets at all. I will also leave links to where I get those in the description box below as well. Then I am using some orange pigment ink and I stamp it down here, and then I leave this here because this is exactly telling me where to add the red ink for the accents on the leaves. Now this is kind of the faux layered look that I go for when I'm stamping these leaves. Again, if you watch the last few videos that I have on these, you'll see how I achieve the kind of faux layered look by just adding some color to the tips of the leaves, and it's a little bit hard to really see. I know oranges and reds don't show up well on camera at all, so I probably should have used some different colors, but I was going with the theme of this card and really just enjoying creating. So it has these gorgeous kind of dimensional looking leaves there, and I am going to finish this off using some vellum to create my sentiment. I always use the Lawn Fawn vellum. This is my favorite because I'm able to stamp on it, I am able to heat emboss on it, and I'm able to dry emboss. Everything I'm able to do with this one vellum, which is really important to me. I'm using the All the Birthday stamp set and this big bold stamp here. So I'm going to make sure to use my anti-static powder bag, plenty of that on there. Then I'm going to ink this up with some Versamark sticky embossing ink. This is a really good quality embossing ink. I have been through many, I have tried many, and I have come back to this one time and time again. I do think it's worth investing in a really good embossing ink pad, and I also think it's worth investing in getting the re-inker for these as well. This is definitely one of my most used ink pads in my stash. Then I'm going to pour on some white embossing powder, and that has come up beautiful and crisp. Then I'm going to heat emboss this. I do move my heat gun around a lot and I don't keep it in one place for long, but there is zero warping. That is absolutely gorgeous. I'm going to cut this out using my trimmer, seeing as I had it here already, cutting down the paper towels, and I'm just going to leave a little border of the vellum. That way you can kind of tell it's really vellum as well. And I didn't want to cover up too much of that beautiful background that we had created, but I did want the sentiment to really stand out because the background is pretty bold in this card. So I'm using some foam tape, and I am able to cut this foam tape. Even though this is super skinny, I'm able to cut this foam tape in half so easily without it bending and kind of getting all frustrating. So I'm going to trim down this card front so it measures 4 by 5 1/4 inches. And everything is going to plan at this point, and I have added the liquid glue. I pop it down on my card base, and I'm kind of looking at it and I think, nope, this isn't really what I was thinking. I'm definitely missing something here, and I knew exactly what I wanted to add. So I grabbed it off quickly, I smoothed out the glue from the back, and it kind of dried enough that I was able to carry on with this next step. I'm using some low-tack mint tape. This is my favorite low-tack tape. Then I'm taking some of the red pigment ink, and I am going to add a very skinny line, like a matte layer around the outside. I love doing this trick because it means I don't actually have to add any more cardstock. I don't have to trim down my panel anymore. And it's using everything that I already have, and I've already used the tulip red color on the card, so it's all matching and really nice. And I definitely knew that that was a really nice finishing touch. I'm glad that I kind of got it in time and was able to pop it off my card base, and then I'm going to do this all over again. I didn't wait for the red pigment ink to dry that I added around the outside, so you can see that I'm being a little bit careful. I don't want to smudge it at this point. I will pop it down onto my card, and to me that looks a whole lot better. Even just that little finishing border really kind of finishes it off for me. I'm going to pop the sentiment square in the middle. It is a nice bright white sentiment that sticks out. This is a cheerful card, but I'm sure you could put lots of different sentiments on this one as well. You could most definitely stop here, but I'm going to add a few little gems. I have this little gem container, and this is kind of my collection of gems. I'm going to pick out a few reds and a couple of oranges, and then this is what I'm going to pop on with a little wax pencil and some of my liquid glue. The liquid glue is the Ranger Multi-Medium and the matte finish, and that means that these little gems are going nowhere once they are glued down. You could add some pops of colour, you could add some Nuvo drops, you could add some gemstones, some sequins. Anything would look gorgeous here, but thank you so much for joining me on this really fun video. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let me know what was your favourite in the comment section down below, and I will look forward to seeing you next time. Bye!